Hi, everyone. Mark DeJesus here, and welcome to this broadcast. In this video, I want to dig deeper into the subject of shame. And I have found personally in my life and in my journey that understanding how shame impacts our hearts, our relationships, our walk with God, it's been so fruitful in my life. And I found it to be so beneficial for people that I've been working with, that I've been helping. So I pray that in this video, you'll get some encouragement to illuminate some areas. You'll feel safer to process in the love and grace of God the issues of your heart that need healing, that need addressing, that need maturing, that need God's grace, that need His nurture to help you to begin to experience more of what your heart was destined to experience with God, with yourself, with others. And so I pray that this video will be a help and a blessing to your life. Before I get into some of the points that I'm going to get into, because I'm going to get into 12 shame-based patterns that we fall into. That's what I'm going to focus in on. Now, I could get into a whole bunch, but I kind of brought down 12 key patterns, behaviors, certain ways we do life. But what I want to first say up front is that shame is I did some videos on what is shame, but it creates a certain perspective over your life, over your weaknesses and flaws. It's very identity focused, meaning that it hits at who you are. And the enemy knows if he can hit at who you are and really keep this shame environment, it's going to be something that's going to keep you from experiencing greater growth in your life in productive ways. And I'm going to get into those. But the main premise is that shame creates a certain perspective. It partners with fear. And so then what we do is we create certain lifestyles, certain presentations, certain ways of acting, and it's all to avoid the feeling of shame. And fear partners in and says, you never want to feel that. So don't go there, don't do this. Build this protective kind of world and lifestyle, presentation, how things look, and so forth, that keep you from really addressing the needs of your life and your heart. So I find if you can understand how shame works at a deeper level, it can be really enlightening and illuminating to help you in how you see God, and to help you maneuver through some very challenging issues of the heart that need to be addressed. And so thank you for all the notices, emails, or the ways you've been contacting me to let me know this has been encouragement to your life and your journey. Many of you've written and said, this shame thing is helping me. And so I'm praying that methodically, step by step, we can walk through some good stuff and help you to experience life and life more abundantly. Okay, so let's get into those 12 shame-based patterns. The first one is this. Shame is going to drive you to focus more on how things look to others. That becomes the primary driving force. Now, every human being has some kind of awareness of how things look to others. So, people say, I don't care what anybody thinks, There's a level of a lie to that because there is an awareness. But when shame becomes a dominant force in your life, you're going to really heighten in on this. And it's really going to be based on how things look. Now, how things are, how they really are, or just more how they look. We become driven to focus on the optics. What does the world see? Are we a healthy family, or do we look like a healthy family? Are we a healthy church, or do we look like a healthy church? Am I living a fruitful walk with God, or do I look like I have that? And that becomes the focus. So it creates these false presentations, and it's exhausting. And why do we do this? We have brokenness in our lives, and we want other people to love us, to like us. But we're now focused on how things look and how we think people will like that certain look. And so in that, some of the concern is you lose sight of who you are. You become deeply swayed by what other people think. And you're always checking the weather of what other people think about you. You're checking the weather on what are they saying? How's this going to look? Churches can do this where it's all about the PR. How are we going to present this? How are we going to, and it can be driven primarily, want to make sure that the image is not messed with. And God many times is like, let's just tear down the image, because we create these graven images of these platforms that we want to look a certain way, right? And because he's like, I want to deal with the real you. But then we get into people pleasing, false burdens, false responsibilities, all these weights because we're so concerned. Maybe as a parent, your child is struggling, but the real problem is you don't want to look like a bad parent. So you want to keep a certain presentation on, right? You don't want to look like you have flaws because flaws mean something. And our culture reinforces this. So we fabricate, we create an image. We create something that is more of a facade that doesn't allow us to be ourselves. Now, God from heaven says, I'm going to use you as a believer. Your strengths, your weaknesses, your flaws, your mistakes, all of you, I'm going to use as a beautiful full package. But see, we become shamed about our past. We become shamed about our present struggles. We become shamed by our flaws, mistakes. And so this whole thing becomes driven, how does this look? Because we often become triggered when how things look gets compromised. And many times people are unsafe, Let's just be honest. You're around people, and when they see the flawed aspects of you or your life, they don't respond very well. So it causes panic, and then we hide more. We hide deeper and we go, I don't want to share that again. Now, the second thing I want to get into is interesting because what happens in the journey, when shame's in the picture, there's a pattern that develops. You develop an inaccurate story of how other people see you. You develop an inaccurate story of how others see you. Now, this is what I mean by that. What I mean is that you have a certain way that you see other people. So it's like you have a struggle and you're like, yeah, everyone sees this. They see this battle. They see this bondage. They know, and they're aware of it. And this is what they think about me. And what happens is we magnify it. Now I'm going to give you a little secret. Okay. I'm going to give you a little secret because shame distorts this. Here's the secret. People are not spending a lot of their days and their time thinking about you. Right? Sometimes we're like, oh, this is what they're thinking. They hate me and they have this and they that. We create this whole story. And really it's the shame within us that then projects out of what we think the world is seeing about us. And really in reality, you know what people are thinking about? Most people are thinking about themselves. They're thinking about themselves. What's in it for me? How does this make me feel? What's going on in my life, right? Even people that betray others, right, and hurt you, they were doing it not primarily to do something against you. It was more to preserve themselves. It's more to self-protect. It's more to keep their image and their stuff going, right? And so shame damages your filter. Now, I'm not saying other people don't think of you in a maybe angry, hateful, contempt kind of way. Well, what happens is you narrow in on this certain area and you think everyone's like just thinking about that about you. So it heightens that sense of shame. And then you're thinking about what others think too much. And then you magnify their negative perception of you. And then you just think they're thinking about you in this way all the time. And I'm not saying they're not. I'm saying what shame will do is really magnify that narrative, get you super aware. So when you walk into a room, they're like, they know this about my marriage. They know this. They know this about this. They know this about my past. They know about this struggle. They know about this weak area. And you narrow in on it, and then that now becomes the focus. It like becomes the thing that's consumed over your eyes. And so I want you to be aware of that because it'll help in your perspective because it doesn't allow you to receive the good that people send your way. And maybe people know things about your flaws, your weaknesses, your struggles in your marriage, in your personal walk, in your life. Okay, and if they can't handle that information well, that's their sin, that's their issue. But shame will get you preoccupied with it. And many times we try to go fix it. And we try to go fix what that image is. It's all shame-based. Now, a primary thing that shame's going to do, it's going to drive you to hide in relationships. You just hide from God like we can really hide from God. But it's just going to cause you to hide relationally. And here's the main premise. People never get to know the real you. Isn't that interesting that you can have relationships for a long time and not know the real you? Now, here's what I discovered. In my pastoral ministry, when I was working at a large church, had a lot going on, the machine of programs and constant activities. When I left that and I began to really pursue transformational ministry, I had to slow down more. Less is better. Not so program oriented, but more relational oriented. It was a whole different focus. I looked back and I realized, wow, there's so much about people I never really knew. I had this realization, wow, these people I worked with in and out, day in and day out, they could have had deep struggles and bondage. I didn't know. They could have had deep pains. It could have been severe depression, suicidal tendencies. No idea. Because see, performance-driven environments increase the shame. It really works on the shame because people with shame focus on doing. I'm going to do to feel better. I'll get to that in just a moment. I'll do to feel better, but we never get to know the real you. What's the real you? Flaws, struggles. I find when I sit down with somebody, sometimes even just casually, it's like there's like an hour or two of shame-based, let me give you a great presentation. And then after time, then the facade starts to break down a little bit and vulnerability comes through. Yeah, I've been struggling. Yeah, this is tough. And it's like there's such a battle over having real, authentic. So we lie, we pose, we put a presentation on. And so we never really get to see the real you. Some streams of faith really promote this because they're performance driven or they're very so positive thinking, talking, speaking. There's no room for, I'm struggling. I'm having a bad day. There's no room for that. It's like, don't say that. Don't think like that. Think positive, right? It's so positive in the name of maybe faith, in the name of hope, but life is filled with ups and downs left and right. The psalmists are the great example of that because the psalmist would be so hopeful and at the same time, absolutely struggling. It's this beautiful mess of I hope in God, but man, things are not going well. And shame won't allow you to do that. Shame won't allow you to just be yourself. And it's not like it's the end of the world. It's not like life is over, but I'm having a hard time. And I know God is real, but there's a struggle. So instead, shame's going to keep you to hide. You never really go there. And many of you were never given room. I know for me, I never felt like I had room to be myself. So I constantly just responded to the form that I saw that was given to me, what I thought people wanted. And so then it led me to I never could have a bad day. I never could have a bad moment. What's going on with Mark? And it just increased that shame over my life until I learned, man, I could be myself because God's working in all my good days, bad days. He's working in it all. And I'm going to allow it to give it all to him. And so I find in my work with people or just interactions, shame it's not gonna allow you to face yourself. And what do I mean by face yourself? Face the real you, face what's really going on, face what needs to be addressed, face maybe just some helpful things that you need to be aware of. Maybe even some correction, right? When we have shame, we can't hear correction. We can't hear, hey, maybe this would be a good thing to tweak. It's because under shame, we hear, I'm a failure. We don't hear, hey, this is a good thing to improve. We hear, I'm a failure. So if your wife says to you, hey, honey, there's something that, if you could do this, it would really be a help. The man hears, you're a bad husband. He doesn't even hear the words that she's saying. He just hears, I'm a bad husband, right? Because shame doesn't allow him to face himself in his life because God's going, I'm not casting you away from me. I'm not leaving, but I want a better relationship. And with shame, there's going to come a lot of pride and we're going to buck back, and that leads me to number 5. It's going to make you very defensive. Be aware of this. If you're very defensive, when people want to talk about certain issues, they get a lot of kickback. People say, I have a lot of pride issues. And I'm struggling with pride, or this person's struggling with pride. Pride has things underneath it that give it that manifestation. And we have pride in a lot of different ways, right? It's ways where we resist. And God says, I resist the proud. There's blocks in our life when pride's there. When you're humble, man, heaven just flows over your heart and over your life, right? But shame says you got to protect yourself. And one of the protections is I'm good. I've got things together. I know things. I can win arguments, or I'm successful. I achieve. There's a presentation that's brought, and we think that's what we need to present. Everything's always going good, and I'm sorry, I just don't relate to that. You don't relate to that in others. You relate to vulnerability, fruitful interactions, real life talk, right? Pride is a cover. And so we go, well, that person's prideful. Well, we all have layers of pride. So let's not be self-deceived. But when we look at pride, we still need to go deeper. Because pride is not the final diagnosis. Underneath the pride is brokenness, vulnerability. And pride is a cover. Shame says, let's keep this cover going, because you can't show vulnerability because it'll be the end of you, right? So that defensiveness comes out of that, stubbornness. It's shame-based. Now, you're also going to blame. Number 6, you're going to blame, and I talked a whole episode about this. You're going to blame God. You're going to blame others. You're going to blame your spouse. You're going to blame your upbringing. You're going to blame people. And instead of productive, where, you're like, well, that thing hurt in my life and I got to work through it, it becomes a blame. You put the heat of the pain, and then, of course, you're going to blame yourself. So I want to encourage people to get out of the blame game, because it doesn't help you to see what you need to see in your healing process. Number 7 is you're going to try. I noticed this my whole life in ministry. You will try to fix yourself, even perform as a way to feel loved. Okay, that fixing yourself, it kind of looks like this. It's here's a good one. It's like I would talk to people. Hey, when I was in pastoring work. Hey, I haven't seen you in a while. I'd love to connect. Yeah, I got some things in my life that I got to work out, and then I'll start being a part of that church group or being a part of this thing. See, there's this mentality we develop, shame-based. I got to fix myself first, then God will love me. I got to get my stuff together, then God will love me, right? You get into the new year, right? You develop New Year's resolution. I'm going to do these things, and then I'll start engaging these other areas, because you feel that you got to fix yourself to be loved. Love is conditional to you. It was presented as conditional. So there's an underlying lie that it says, I will not be loved in my current state of flaws, weaknesses, and struggles. Okay? So it's important to understand you're going to try to fix yourself. And that's performance-based Christianity. I have a lot of resources where I talk about that, helping people to get free in those areas. Okay? So number 8 is processing issues of the heart will be unproductive. So when you deal with pain or frustration, and I see this all the time, is we begin talking about an issue and the anger rises up, right? And they feel bad for being angry. I'm sorry, I shouldn't talk like this. And I go, no, just let it out. And then they're angry at God and angry at themselves. And then they speak over their situation with contempt. What do I mean by it? Contempt. It's this sense of like talking down to something. And quite frankly, a lot of times in my work with people, I will have to make this observation. You are very hard on yourself about very significant areas of pain and issues. And so what happens is we dismiss it, right? My pain, there's starving people in Africa, or there's other people that have it worse. And these people over there, their situation's worse. So we start comparing our situation and then looking down at our pain. Like, I should be over this by now. I should be past this. Shame. It's all shame-based. When you take the shame off, what you enter into is self-compassion, which self-compassion says, all right, it's all right. I've got to work through this, process it. It's going to take time. It'll take as long as it takes. And I got to be kind, because when you're kind to yourself over your struggle, you start to drown out the shame, because shame cannot stand in place when love, grace, and mercy are really being activated. And you start by learning to acknowledge the kindness of God over you and give that to yourself and start talking to yourself with a new narrative that's peaceful, that's kind, that is encouraging, that is understanding, that's patient, versus all these things we do to body slam. And it makes the healing process unproductive. So if I can help you with shame, I have just launched you into a productive healing journey in your life. Okay? Number 9 is shame is going to lead you to misdiagnose yourself. Misdiagnose yourself. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean this, is that when you have shame in your life, you will be quick to judge, not quick to have compassion. So, for example, people will go into New Year's resolutions and they'll say, you know what? I need to lose weight. And I'm overweight because I'm fat, and I'm fat because I'm lazy. I'm just lazy. And that's their diagnosis. Now, here's the thing. Because they don't see themselves with compassion, they may be not really getting to the why of what's really going on. Maybe you're overweight because actually you're not sleeping well, and you need to deal with your sleep, because that's affecting cortisol, and cortisol is causing you to retain body fat. Or maybe you have an incredible amount of stress in your life, and so you do whatever diet or exercise you could think of, and you're just still retaining that fat because cortisol is there and it's holding the fat, because cortisol is your stress hormone that kicks in, right? Lazy is a very good example. People go, I need to read my Bible more, and I don't read my Bible because I'm lazy. That's where a lot of people tend to, and that's often a very big misdiagnosis. Because when I talk with people in the kindness and grace of God, I say, well, wait a second. Tell me about your Bible reading. And then we start to, in the goodness and patience of God and his grace, we look and we see with the eyes of God's love. We go, oh, here's some things that happened in your journey. And reading the Bible fell on the wayside because of some broken issues. Let's let God deal with those areas and slowly restore a passion for his word back. Don't beat yourself up on this. Let's not try to performance drive our way back into. That's what a lot of people do with their resolutions, right? Many of our New Year's resolutions are shame-based. I got to do this. And what's the end goal? So I will feel better about myself and people will look at me in a different way, and then I'll be loved. And there were some years where I said, you know what? I'm not setting any goals this year. I'm not setting any New Year's resolution. I just want to learn daily to be loved and learn to each day be present. Let God love me, love my neighbor as myself. And I want to take the pressure of that off. And in that, I discovered more of the root issues of my heart anyways. See, when you're under shame, it doesn't let you get to root issue. What's the core issue? You know, people will say to me, I don't pray enough, and I don't know this. And then I realize there's a real obvious pattern of depression in their life that needs some tender care for some reasons or some things they haven't acknowledged, some pain they haven't processed through. And there's like an emotional tilt and they've lost motivation. So it's not just not praying. There's a lot of things they just don't have desire for anymore. And it's like, let's deal with those brokenhearted issues and begin to see desire, which the Bible says is a tree of life, because hope deferred makes the heart sick. Let's look at where maybe hope was deferred. Let's maybe look at some areas where the life and vitality was taken out of your life and your journey. Then some light bulbs come off. They go, oh my goodness, it wasn't just because I was just lazy, right? That's what shame does. It just misdiagnoses you. You know, you have a thought that crosses your mind that's impure. And you go, you know why? I'm a dirty, lustful person. And maybe you just need to understand that you've been in performance-driven living for so long that at the end of the day, you crave something to fill your empty heart. Or maybe you're just tired, or maybe there are areas of your life that need fulfillment in love, and so you become more prone to these sexual lust-filled thoughts. I mean, but people tell me all the time, you know, it's because I have this dirty flesh that's taking over my life, and I'm like, wow, you really speak and talk to yourself and evaluate yourself in a harshness that doesn't allow the grace and goodness of God to illuminate what's needed to free you, to set you free. Because how are you going to get free if you're constantly misdiagnosing yourself with these symptomatic, judgmental things that don't let you get to the real reason why you do what you do, why you don't do what you'd like to do? And shame's just covering the whole thing. Now, this is a common thing we do in shame, is you're going to perform and achieve to feel better about yourself. You will constantly be in that performance-driven mode to save yourself, to feel better. Many of you believe a lie, I don't belong unless I have something to offer. You know, when I left pastoral ministry work, specifically institutional pastoral work, I went through a form of an identity crisis. Like, who am I now apart from all that pull? Because as a pastor, you have all these things pulling on you. Okay, it's not there. Who am I now? And I crashed. I've gone through a number of stages of that where I had to learn, who am I? Because shame kept me in that, keep this going, keep this going, keep this going. Keep doing what you think everyone needs you to do. And then I never really cultivated a true depth of like, what is in my heart? What do I want to do? What is my passion? What are the things that burn within my heart? Many of you struggle with that. You struggle to even know what your passion is because you lived your life in response to what you think needed to happen at every turn. You never stopped and said, what's bubbling in me? What's happening in my heart? And I felt in so many circles, I couldn't belong unless I showed up with something to offer, something to accomplish, something to present, to just be me. There wasn't much love, much connection offered and available. And I had to break that lie and start to learn who I really am apart from all the things I do. And it's a major thing that performance-driven people have to do. You have to learn who you are apart from what you do. And sometimes you have to actually be booted out of that environment. Maybe it's a sabbatical, maybe it's a leave, maybe you lose your job, maybe you lose that role, and you're brokenhearted about it, but it can actually be a great gift for you. It can actually be where you learn who you are at such a deeper level. And I've gone through that, and I actually now appreciate that. So achievement isn't wrong, doing things isn't wrong, but is that the primary way? Feel better about yourself? How about you peel back the performance and achievement, learn to just sit in nothingness and learn and lean into that discomfort and go, but God, I want to learn who I really am. And I want to lean into this and let the shame come off of me, because otherwise you're going to come under a lot of pressures and stay in that hamster wheel. Now, this is a big one for me. It's a big one for OCD people. It's a big one for people who are aware of their perfectionistic tendencies. Shame will cause you to be perfectionistic. It's a control cover. It's a cover to try to feel a sense of control over your life and over circumstances. If I can have things just right in just this way, relationally, circumstantially, environmentally, then I'll be okay. But then what happens is when that perfectionistic cover is messed with a little bit, it's like the cards collapse. And I've had to realize this in many different layers of where perfectionism was actually shame-based and went right back to my childhood. Of how do I belong? Here was my driving force. I got to make sure I do things just right. I got to make sure I do things just right for God, just right for my family, just right for my leaders. And then it just pressure. And what's driving it? Well, a lot of things are driving it. Rejection's driving it, need for love, all that. But shame will tell you, if flaws are known, if you don't do things just right, you won't be loved, you won't be effective. And it's all just a bunch of garbage lies. But it takes time and awareness to come to the realization, I can't serve that anymore. And lastly, I'm going to say this. It's going to keep you bound in sin, keep you bound in bondage. Why? Because the very nature of shame looks at all your struggles and says, hide them. It'll tell the addict, you can figure this out on your own. You can work through these things on your own. You don't need any help. Do it on your own. Don't bring it up. Don't share. It will keep your marriage at a cap because there isn't authentic truth. Because here's the thing about God. He'll deal with anything in our lives, anything. But he won't violate his nature, which is he is light. God is light, and in him there is no darkness. So he'll deal with anything. It is the light of love. Many people see it as a light of exposing shame, when in reality, it's a light of love. It's the greatest place to live in, but the devil will do everything in his power to keep you in hiding. And so our relationships suffer because of that. Because true relationship bond grows, marriages grow, true bonded friendships grow, covenant-connected relationships grow when there's greater honesty, when there's greater truth, in safety, in love, in grace. It has to be there. Otherwise, those things become arrows and we start attacking each other. God heals in the light. So let me ask you a question. Where is shame infecting your marriage where you're not going to those places you need to? Where is shame affecting certain battlegrounds in your life where it needs to be brought into the light? Because you've bought the lie, you can get free by yourself. I'm not telling you to back the truck up and share it with everybody, because not everybody's safe. I'm not telling you to just go on social media, and hopefully you're not practicing that anyways. But I'm talking about hiding is a condition. You can be around lots of people and still be in hiding. It's an inward condition. And don't listen to condemnation, you're beating you up. But listen to truth in love. Where are you hiding? And allow God to bring things to the light. Where are you performing because if people knew that you're weak and flawed and you have issues, that you'd crumble? Where do you feel the need to have to pose? Because if you don't keep that presented, you won't be loved. So I pray this is an encouragement for your life, for your journey. I know the subject has been really, really helpful for me. If it's been a blessing to you, go to markdejesus.com. If these videos are a blessing to where you're at and where you're headed, consider going to markdejesus.com, click on the donate button, and do a one-time donation. That would help us out so much. I'm going to be developing more and more videos, and my goal here is that in the love and grace of God, you can process the truth that'll set you free. Look forward and see you next time.